Chris. I'm one of the pastors here at Cornerstone Wirral, and I'm joined today by Josh, one of the lead pastors here, and his wife Annie. Annie, welcome. Josh, welcome. We're doing a new series of podcast, which is going to be focusing in ultimately on the glory of God, what He has been doing, His wondrous works through the life and through the ministry of Cornerstone Wirral. This year, we are celebrating our 10th anniversary. It's been a full 10 years of God doing marvelous things. But it's been a number of times where we've had hardships, where there's been difficulties amongst the joys, amongst the peaks of God's faithfulness, of His glory being displayed, His grace being manifested. And so we want to hear stories. We want to share stories with the wider church and anyone else who's really listening about what He has done and what He is continuing to do into the next decade and beyond. So those who are listening, and they're invited into this conversation with us. It's going to be kind of like we're just gleaning as much information from each other as possible. I can't wait to hear these stories. I've always heard a little bit of the tidbits from the church history, but I'm looking forward to hearing and hopefully sharing some of those wondrous works that God is doing through this church. So Josh and Annie, welcome to this very first episode of His Wondrous Works. It's so good to have you with us. Why don't you share a little bit about yourselves and kind of where all of this started?
Okay. So Annie and I met in Leeds at university. Annie was in her fourth year. I was in my first year. Depends who tells the story. She was sweeping up a fresher before she graduates, desperate for a future. And I was very willing and voluntarily happy to receive that. So we met at university in Leeds. We got married in 2009. We spent our first 2 years in Norwich, where Annie is from. Annie was a primary school teacher there. I was teaching PE, doing a bit of coaching for Norwich City. We were part of a great church there, which was a wonderful time. And then 2011, we moved to Wirral.
Right. And you're from Northern Ireland. You're from Norwich.
Yeah.
What brought you to the Wirral? I didn't even know of the Wirral until recent years. And I've only moved here about 5-6 years ago. And previous to that, I had no clue where the Wirral was. I'm sorry. I didn't know.
I mean, neither did I.
Okay. It's not just me.
No,
you're even from England.
I knew where Liverpool was.
Okay.
And I'd heard of the Wirral. My sister was in Liverpool for uni. So she's talked about bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And yeah, Josh. I came here with Josh. That's how we ended up here.
Yeah, I guess that story starts even further back. Yeah. Way back in 2006, myself, James Jaggard and Matt Newbury were on a Ambassadors in Sport football tour to Senegal and Guinea-Bissau. And there was kind of like relationships, friendships started. James and myself actually ended up being in America for a period of time playing football. Yeah. And through those kind of years, we began to formulate, because both of our stories had football and playing football to a decent level between us, but both being believers, both yearning for, when we were growing up, a context in which we could have been discipled as young believers in the football world. And so we kind of dreamt up an idea that we had both heard and seen and caught elsewhere, to start an academy of sports ministry here on Wirral, to help equip local churches to use sport as a tool to share the gospel, but also to disciple footballers. Okay. Both in kind of the higher end of the game, semi-pro, pro, and trying to help them in their journey. So we designed an academy, a summer academy for a few months, and we would receive 12 to 14 guys from all over the world. They'd come to Wirral, they'd be housed and hosted in local churches, and they would serve there. And we'd train full time, do some discipleship with them, and try to bless Wirral with them. And then through the year, we'd do different events and stuff for churches to help them in their mission.
Right. And so help me with the timeline. That was, what age were you guys whenever that happened?
25, 26.
No, you were younger. So we, 2011, we moved here. So I was 23. Okay. Or maybe you 25.
Yeah, 25.
Yeah. Just emphasizing Annie's age. Yeah. It's cool.
Annie actually moved here when she was 26, because your birthday was just before we got the house.
No, we got the house on the 1st of August, 2nd of August, not 26 till the 5th.
Do you know what? I got my house on the 1st of August too. Yeah. That's good. I like that. Yeah. Must be something about August and moving here.
And it was hard, because actually we'd spent 2 years in Norwich, great church family, near Annie's family. school you were familiar with and had done really great stuff in. We moved to the other side of the country. Annie moved away from everything she knew. You know, that was okay for me. Like I coped with that fine because of my own story. But for Annie, that was hard for you.
Yeah, it was tough because although I would have been away from my family at university, moving here was more of a permanent sort of thing. And I didn't, coming from a very sort of country small school to a larger school and not knowing anybody.
Yeah.
Bar James and Gemma, that was it. And I didn't know anybody. It was really tough. Okay. And it was tricky first year in school, I think just mainly because I wasn't sure. I was just settling, so I know finding my feet, working out what we were doing. Yeah. Josh was busy quite a lot in the evening stuff, doing football. Which was great. I got to be involved in that, which was really good. Quizzes and things, which I loved, and seeing lots of different churches across Merseyside. That was great. It was an exciting time, but it was tricky. It was hard for me to be away. Yeah.
So you guys started out with a ministry in football, and seeking to reach and help and equip churches in the midst of that. At what point in this kind of timeline did you begin to feel a calling or a conviction into actually the need to plant churches?
I think for me, when I came to university, the church I was a part of was a church that wanted to be a church planting church. And there was a guy, one of the pastors there, a guy who was also part of Christians in Sport, discipled me and two other guys for 3 years. The whole time, and he was going through training that then I would then go through, right. And so I was being formed, I think, in that environment. And then when we moved to Norwich, I think I was being really formed with opportunities in the church we were in, conferences, reading lots of stuff, particularly from Acts 29 world, just soaking up and being formed by all of those things, because at that point, Acts 29 was kind of exploding in the States. It was coming over to the UK. Some really prominent figures were challenging the status quo. So I think as a young guy coming in, I was finding older guys who were being a bit of a model, an example to follow, and also hearing a call to that. So that was all forming me. I think I was swimming in those waters. I was reading every book I could get. I was listening to every podcast I could listen to. It was going to every conference I could go to. And so I was swimming in it.
Yeah.
But then when we moved here, what really struck us was, I think was a personal thing first. We really struggled to find a church to call home. Not because there wasn't churches with lovely people in them, but the main options at that point and stage of life were mainly, like in close proximity to us, that is, were Church of England churches. And by way of conviction, that wasn't our theological convictions. So it wasn't that there was anything wrong with those churches. It was just that we wouldn't be able to feel comfortable in that environment. But we did, because it was our only option, we did join one of those churches called Holy Trinity, and we did plug in there. But we were very open with those guys there and the whole Wirral Gospel Partnership, that what I've been so fortunate to see behind the front doors of so many churches and partnering with them through sports ministry was the common rhetoric was there's a real need for more churches on Wirral. So there's 330,000 people, less than 2% attend gospel preaching church. And we can either be part of that decline or we can do something about it. So that was the reality of what, personally for us, we were fine. That was part of what made it hard for us, was
not having a church family on. We had some great people that loved and cared for us, but finding a place that we know would call home and people around us like we'd been used to back in Norwich.
Yeah.
And like those alternatives are like 25, 35 minutes. That was going against everything we were really convinced by biblically, which was like local people reaching their neighbors, their communities, and being present in those, being in proximity with believers, frequently meeting together, trying to be on mission in those like that was just, we just felt on our own in that. And all the options were taking us out of what we really believed. Yeah. And that was why we felt really called to that.
Yeah. And was there anything that kind of catalyzed that for you guys? So as you prepared to maybe consider and step into thinking about planting a church?
I guess we needed help, didn't we?
Yeah.
I was full of ideas and aspirations and that, and I used to sit in the Wirral Gospel Partnership meetings. I don't know really why I did. I was like, but it was like all the pastors would meet, and I would turn up to every single one, and I would just share a little bit about what we were doing, but just to hear it and share that vision. And I guess in the Gospel Partnership guys, they were all like, thumbs up. We think you'll be good at this. But yeah, we think your vision's good. We're not really sure what to do with you though. And so at that point, I'd already signed up to do what was called Porterbrook Seminary then, which is now Crossland Seminary. So in 2011, September 2011, I went to do that, started that, and that became that kind of theological formation for me, to put all these ideas and yearnings and longings to be more theologically informed. And it was there that at the same time when I was starting was Steve Robinson from, as was Ramley's Road Chapel at that stage, now Cornerstone Liverpool.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I have a real affinity to Ramley's Road and Cornerstone Liverpool, because little did I know those years, and I don't think we crossed paths in Ramley's Road, but I was in that building. I was listening to Steve as he was preaching, and I was up in Newcastle upon Tyne at the time. We had driven down to see Joe's sister, and I remember going, "This is a great church. I wish I could be part of this church." It's a bit of a distance to travel each Sunday. So we didn't join that, but that was my first kind of introduction into what Acts 29, churches that plant churches that revitalize churches look like. That excited me. So no doubt, if you're sitting in the midst of that, if you're getting to know those guys, how long did you spend getting to know Steve and some of the others?
Well, we kind of spent from the September to the Christmas was a period of Annie and I going and spending time with Steve and Shan, and me then meeting some of the elders there. And then actually me and Steve organized a meeting with Roger at Holy Trinity and some of the Gospel Partnership guys to kind of say, look, like Josh is we think it's good for Josh to move to this church, to be trained and equipped, submit to the elders, to be sent back to plant, to start a congregation. And like they thought that was great. They were really up for that. For me, I was like, these guys are my nearest Acts 29 church. I wanted to be assessed for Acts 29. I wanted to be part of that network. I wanted to plant that church here. We weren't planning on going anywhere. But I guess like one of the most formative questions we got asked was, like Steve asked of us, and of me particularly, was, are you willing to see this church planted if you're not the guy that leads it? And that was a great question. And I use that question now with guys, because what it does is it says, are you really about seeing this area reached? Yeah.
Or is it you that wants to plant the church?
Or is it just about you? And I think that teased out for us is that no, we feel really called to this area to see a church needs to be planted here, and more churches need to be planted. Yeah. And so kind of then in the January, I think we had to January 2012, we were officially part of Cornerstone Liverpool. Right. But by that stage.
Amazing. And did you receive, so you've had a bit of Porterbrook training, you've had hands-on training kind of coming alongside, working alongside Steve and Shan and others in a church that's been revitalized. Well, what were kind of some of the next steps before 2013, before kind of coming and planting in the Wirral? Annie?
I think so. We spent a lot of time learning the culture, in seeing Shan's house a lot, getting to know their family, getting to know what gospel community was and what it was like, because that was slightly different to what we've been used to as well. And just seeing people doing life together, like everything through just shopping together or picking up the kids, and just really, it's like a family, really close family. And it was amazing. And like, it was a lot of traveling. Like I used to go across from Chester to Liverpool through the Runcorn Bridge, and we'd be there 3 or 4 nights babysitting and just being part of the life, which was a really, really great time, really invaluable.
Yeah, when we could do all before kids.
yeah, we had a lot of time then.
I'd basically spend most of my week, whenever I could, over there. And then, like as Annie said, after school, she'd come and we'd be there in the evenings. And so it was an intense year. It was an intense year of doing that. Obviously, I was still doing sports ministry stuff, so we were still cracking on with that and did loads of stuff here. But yeah, that became home. But we had to, this is the cost of church planting. Like you have to step into that. Like that was a lot of travel. That was a lot of time away. There was a lot of time with other people, even when it was uncomfortable to us, or even when we might wanted a rest or a break. It's like, no, like that's part of the cost here. Like to see, you only get to 10 years down the road when you've counted the cost there. And I think that's the challenge to all of us in our culture.
When you look back, it's not really like just traveling. I've got half an hour to travel, but it's just amazing when you got there. You're just part of this family.
Yeah, the fruit that comes from that kind of that expenditure of time and traveling. And I imagine those conversations as you drove back each time, are just filled with fruitfulness of like dreaming big. as you've been talking, I've just been wanting to think through is, if someone was keen and thinking about church planting themselves now, would you encourage them to get that saturated into the life of a local church and following leaders, like literally like staying in their lives, being in their lives 24/7?
Yeah, like just getting involved in their lives, what that looks like for them day to day. Like for me, like what does family life look like? We hadn't been married very long really and no children, but it's like seeing what Christian family, how it evolves, how they work out ministry, along with family life, how they raise their children, what it look, just generally what life looks like a little bit on a stage further on from what we were on.
Yeah.
Your question's trying to expose the point. The problem in our country today when we're training leaders is that they have no context. They're filled with theology in their minds, but they've got no experience. Yeah. They've got no context. And so we didn't really plan it like that. It was, Steve didn't have a shiny program to offer me. There was certainly no money. We weren't getting paid to do any of this. And it was that sense of like, just be saturated by it. And that's not changed about us. Like that's still the goal and the prayers.
And it got you to work out what you wanted in a church over here. Like we were thinking about what that looked like, what it looked like to be in our house, what, hospitality looked like, what all those things look like. And what we want to do over here,
And no doubt that shapes and informs the gospel community lifestyle that we encourage as a church, doesn't it? Doing life together, being on mission together as a family. And that's kind of what it's all about. Now, coming up to 2013, you kind of are in Liverpool at that time, then you're starting to kind of gather a little bit in the Wirral. How did that come about? How did you find people to join you on that mission? Like, what did you do? What's the story?
And other than people here, we had people outside that were really praying for us in different places as well. So they were really supportive. Like, my mum and dad are very supportive, and they were like praying. And when Josh became an elder, they're from Norwich. So when I turned the corner, literally walking up the road, and there was mum and dad walking up, I was like, whoa, they like just come for the day just to support us in that. So that was great. Yeah. And seeing little things like that along the way. That's not answering your question, is it?
That's just definitely an encouraging story, and no doubt Andy and Karen will be watching, listening, commenting. We love them. We'll try and get them on a podcast later on.
They will remember the early days like that as well.
We so as obviously then conversations begin to flow and plans begin to be laid. So we ended up kind of kept running another academy for the 90 plus in 2012, and then that September I kind of started thinking about giving a bit more time to the planting side of things. So a bit of a transition happened, so that by January 2013, James had kind of very taken up the reins of the sports ministry stuff and did a great job of that, and then I was able to kind of focus on the planting stuff. And actually, one of the great things that happened was when we took out the 90 plus boys on a tour to Scotland, we actually ended up in Niddry Community Church, which is a church planted revitalized by Mes McConnell, which is now the kind of been where 20 schemes came out of, and the Church in Hard Places conversations came out of. So this was like way before that became a thing. God crossed our paths, and so up there, I was sharing all this with him, and he was peppering me with loads of questions, and actually became that church actually supported us with some money to help us to get this off the ground. So all of that basically led to, in January 2013, starting gathering on the Wirral. With ourselves, Lee and Jen and Hannah, and we from that time did that. We talk about going and gather people, like we got free. I didn't really do a great job, did I? But we convinced Lee and Jen to move to Wirral. Jen's already from the Wirral, so I played on that and convinced Hannah to move to the Wirral.
No, Hannah came. We were there telling what your plans were in. We were in a church in a service, and Josh was up the front explaining what our plans were. And Hannah had come for the first time, and she had been in Guatemala. Yeah, sorry, slipped mine. She'd been in Guatemala, and it's the first service she came, and she was like, heard Josh, and she was like, yeah, I can do that. And she's spoke to us, and then it was great. Like her.
Because Hannah as well is from the Wirral.
Hannah's from the Wirral.
Had she been in Liverpool?
She was in Guatemala, then moved back to Liverpool. Okay. Yeah. Following that, but was not quite settled on what to do next and where she was going. Yeah.
So her family and all on the Wirral. The same as Jen's family were all on the Wirral.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
So we started then, from once January started, we were doing this. We were meeting every week, praying through what we're going to do and that type of stuff.
Josh would bring lots of estate agent leaflets.
Yes.
Every week.
That's an interesting tactic.
I was very well known by all the estate agents in Edmonton. First name basis with all of them.
Wow.
I'd go in and out, and they would call me before they would put anything in the windows. They would call me and they would say, "We're about to put up a 2-bed.
Is there anyone you know who might want?
If you get any more in your team that need first dibs on
this? What
this?"
a partnership right there.
So I used to then bring them all to Lee and Jen and to Hannah and other people, and kind of like, if you need,
it was a joke, but actually, it was they were going to move back over. So
yeah. But it was a joke, but also serious. We were all serious about it because we really believed in life on life together.
Yeah.
So for Lee and Jen to move over and go like, we're going to be part of church, but we're going to live in West Kirby. It wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
It was like we all had to like get in and saturate and think about how we're going to do this. How can we live such compelling lives together that Port Sunlight, Bemington, the Ferries, Bromborough, Eastham can begin to see the gospel and want to be drawn to Christ through it.
It was great. We used to, me, Jen and Hannah used to meet in her house in Liverpool once a week. We'd read the Bible and pray like every week. And it was an amazing time, like just the three of us, just praying for people we knew, people that are now part of Cornerstone. We're like, I've still got the notes in my Bible, and I'm like, wow, they're part of our church, or they've become, all these answered prayers.
Isn't that amazing to have that history, like praise God for what he has been doing through those little relationships and conversations and kind of partnering together for the sake of the gospel here. I remember whenever I was looking into Cornerstone Wirral before we had moved and seeing some of those early videos of the young fresh-faced Josh, kind of walking around the Albert Dock and through the tunnel, and exciting times. I think we even crossed paths in 2014 at a conference. Unbeknown to me, I was sitting at the far side of an auditorium, and there was this young couple with a very young baby, kind of, and I was going, these guys are crazy. Imagine, like, they must be fully invested in this to bring I don't know, Evie must have been like a couple of weeks,
2 weeks old. And I think in the middle of London with a big pram, first time parents with everything there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I'd do it again now that early on. But it was great.
But it's amazing. Like even then there was a little bit of like crossing paths together, partnership with different people. And I think that's a thread that is interwoven in the story of Cornerstone. That even at the very, very beginning, hearing those threads being pulled and people coming and partnering together for the sake of the gospel, reaching the 330,000 here in the Wirral. I love it. I think that's going to be time for us, unless there's anything else you want to share.
There's lots we could share.
We could keep going forever. But
a few more episodes.
We'll keep it for a few more episodes. Well, that's our first episode of His Wondrous Works. We're going to have episodes dropping every single week in the run-up to our 10-year celebrations and that big birthday bash. So if you've enjoyed this episode, do go on, like the episode, subscribe on whatever app you're using, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're following on Spotify, whatever it might be. And why not share some of these with others in the church and others abroad beyond the church itself, if it's something that they might enjoy too. We'll catch you next time for His Wondrous Works podcast. God bless. See you soon.